like me, it's a wow experience every day to be able to put food into your body and you just love it, then how do we know what's going to be high performance food? How do we know what's, obviously you know what pleasurable food is. How do we know what's great food for somebody else? And I think that's probably a very important question when we are an exercise professional, particularly when people ask us about food. And there's a big scale of how people appreciate food. So you might be at this end, which is I eat solely for performance. I don't care what it tastes like. I don't care what it looks like. I don't care how much it is or how little it is. I want to look good. So I want ripped abdominals. I want low body fat percentage. I want big muscles. I want to look good in the mirror. So this is what I eat for. At this end of the scale, there's none of that going on. It's just I eat for pleasure. I love the experience of food. I love being in the kitchen. I love cooking for my family. I love sitting down to a beautiful meal. Food is a really important part of my life. I don't care how many calories are in the food. I don't care whether it's fat or sugar or protein or alcohol, or I don't care. I just want to thoroughly enjoy my food. I don't count calories. I just want to love my food. And you may fit somewhere between I only eat for performance to I only eat for pleasure. And then probably somewhere in the middle, there's a bit of both. So yes, I want to look good. Yes, I want to have a stack of energy. Yes, I want to perform at my best, but I also want to enjoy my food. So here's a great question. As an exercise professional, what information do we give about food? Should we give about food? What should we know about food? And more importantly, probably is how do we know what other people like to eat? So it's really easy if somebody comes to you and says, could you please tell me what to eat? Or I want to lose weight, how should I eat? Or I want to put on muscle size, how should I eat? Or I want to have high performance for my sport, what fuel should I put into my body? And as humans, it's really normal to want to answer that question. We've been taught since we were little kids that if somebody asks us a question, we give them the answer. And that's all great, except that how do we know what this person likes to eat, what they don't like to eat? Do we know the reasons why they eat or they don't eat? Do we know what times of the day it's important for them to eat? Do we know where they like to eat? Some people are really committed to, I'm going to eat out of this plastic container and it's going to be low calorie or high performance or high nutritious food, and I'm going to do it, this eating experience is going to be standing here in the gym or standing here in the kitchen because I've got to get the high performance food. And for other people, it's a really sociable, pleasurable, amazing experience to go somewhere and eat food. So do we know why people eat? Do we know where they eat? Do we know what times of the day is important for them to eat? Do we know what their favourite foods are and what their least favourite foods are and what they just wouldn't eat and the reasons why they wouldn't eat that food? And then how do we adapt all of that to suit our client? And as an exercise professional, I always ask this question. Do you know how to get people really fit? So do you know how to turn a human body into a machine that is of high performance all of the time and all of the body systems work together? Do you know how to get people really strong? Because obviously if you want to get fit, you've got to get puffed. To get puffed, you've got to be able to move your body, and that doesn't work very well if you have weak muscles and weak bones, weak ligaments, tendons and joints. So as an exercise professional, my specialty, my expertise, what I specialize in is exercise. So I know how to get people fit and I know how to get people strong. And ideally, as an exercise professional, would it be a really good idea to then be able to adapt how to get fit and how to get strong to somebody's lifestyle? So it's the physiology and anatomy of strength and fitness, and then how do I adapt that exercise program to suit this unique individual that's sitting in front of me? Now, as an exercise professional, that's usually pretty easy because most people don't like to exercise. So all we've got to do is find something that we can adapt into their lifestyle. And when I say that, it's been suggested by some of the best experts in the world that only 1 out of 10 people, so 9 out of 10 people either don't want to exercise, or even if they are exercising, they don't like it. There's very few of us who actually love to exercise. Food, on the other hand, is a completely different story and a lot more controversial and a lot more opinionated, and we can get into big trouble with food because everybody eats food, as I shared, for whatever reason, whether it's for performance or for pleasure or somewhere in between. But everybody has an opinion about food, and here's a better question. Do people have the right to have an opinion about food? The foods that you really love to eat, imagine if somebody said to you, you can't have them, they're bad for you. And the foods that you really don't like, or you don't like the taste of, or you wouldn't eat for moral or ethical reasons or religious reasons, somebody says to you, you have to eat these. I'm asking that question very personally because on a regular basis, I'm working with people who have been offended by, have been hurt by, annoyed by, frustrated by, and been made very angry by somebody who told them what to eat. And then, of course, it's not just what to eat, it's how often to eat, how much to eat, what times of the day you should be eating, and there's a big argument for all of those things. But I share with you again that people have become angry, annoyed, frustrated, and hurt because somebody of our profession, somebody who was a personal trainer or a boot camp instructor or a nutritionist or an exercise physiologist or even a doctor said to them, don't eat that, it's bad for you, or you can't have your favorite foods because it's bad for you, or you have to eat this horrible food that they didn't even like, or you have to eat something that is against your core values, against your morals, against your ethics, against your religious beliefs. So I'm asking as an exercise professional, and my heart to yours as I always share, would it be a really good idea to find out about each individual's eating habits before we start telling them, preaching at them, teaching them about food? And I'll go a step further. Why do we need to teach people, tell people, preach at people about food? Couldn't we be respectful? And I want to give you a really interesting example. One of my students shared with me that she was eating her lunch peacefully by herself, and somebody came up to her and told her that she shouldn't be eating that, it's bad for you. And she's only young, she's a teenager still. The person that yelled at her is somebody that she had respected in regards to being an expert with food and exercise. And she walked away from that confrontation crying. That person had really upset her feelings. So I'm going to start with that. Should we be respectful of other human beings, regardless of what they eat or how much exercise they do or don't do, or whether we agree with the way they exercise or the way they are eating? Could it be a really good idea to build a relationship with somebody first before we try and change the way they eat? And there's a really great question to ask, and I ask it all the time. Well, there's a series of questions with 4 questions. If somebody is energetic all of the time, so they wake up with energy, they go to bed with energy, they sleep deep, and their life is not lacking in energy, could that be a great test for, or could that be something we should be able to demand from our eating and exercise plan? So number 1 is energy. Number 2 is performance. If somebody is performing at their best all of the time at whatever they do, whether it's sport or exercise or training or being a parent or being an athlete or being a business person or being a construction worker or whatever it is that they do, the person that's in front of you, are they performing at their best? Number 3 is, do they like the way they look in the mirror, or do they like the way they look in their clothes, or do they like the way they feel when they rub themselves in the shower? That's always my favourite. It's the look and feel. Should we be able to demand from our eating and exercise plan that we look good and feel good? And then are we getting the results that we want from our eating and exercise plan? And if somebody asks me a question about food, I always ask those 4 questions. So great question. Should I be a vegan vegetarian? Should I be a carnivore? Should I be an intermittent faster? Should I go on the ketone diet? All of those different questions. I always ask this immediately in return. Share with me, my little puppy dog's asking as well. That's Broody. He's obviously, his exercise program and eating plan's working really well for him because he's 20 years of age, which is a very cool age for a puppy dog. So, question. When anybody shares any information with you or asks a question of you, would it be really nice to return with this? Great question that you've asked me. Number 1, are you performing at your best? Do you have a stack of energy? Do you love what you see in the mirror? And are you getting the results that you want from your eating and exercise plan? And if the answer is yes, could it be a really good idea just to congratulate that person? Because I'll rephrase. How many people do you know that are full of energy, they perform at their best all of the time, they love what they see in the mirror, they love the way their body feels naked in the shower, and they are getting the results they want from their eating and exercise plan? That's a very rare person, and maybe that's the person that we should be listening to. But here's an even better question. Just because whatever they're doing is working for them doesn't mean that it would work for me or would it work for you. And I think that when it comes to food, we probably need to ask some more questions. So they're the 4 main ones for me is, do you have a stack of energy? Do you you perform at your best? Do you love what you see in the mirror, and are you getting the results that you want from your eating and exercise plan? If the answer is no, then let's have a look at what we need to change. And here's my question as an exercise professional. What do we change? How do we change it? When do we change it? And do we actually need to change anything, or would it be up to the person to decide if they want to change? So if I go back to the fundamentals, what I've got in front of me here is some of the controversial things when it comes to food, and some of the things to consider that might get you into trouble if you're not careful. And the things that I've got here, some people would consider to be bad food, and some people would consider to be good food. So from a technical point of view when it comes to food, let's have a look first at what food is and why we need to understand about it if we're an exercise professional. And of course, if I want to be fit and if I want to be strong, I have to fuel my body to do that. I get that. So what do I need to do? What's the fuel that I need to put into my body to make sure that I've got the energy to do all the things that I want to do? And that technically is very, very simple. There's just 4 macronutrients. So I'll start first with something that isn't a macronutrient, but probably the most important thing, because we can live for quite a while without food, and there's some people now that are suggesting you can live 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks without food. But without fluid, without water, we could get ourselves into some trouble. So instead of telling people what to drink though, could it be a great question to ask, do you have long clear wheeze? Which would then share with you straight away whether this person is hydrated or not. And then, do we have to drink water? And there's a great question that's, I think we miss a bit in our profession, is do we only get water from water, or do we also get water from food? And how much water do we get from food? And something like watermelon, for instance, is it possible that that could be a large amount of fluid in there? And do we have to tell people to drink water? Versus, do you have long clear wheeze? And if you've got long clear wheeze, is it possible that you're doing really well on the hydration side? And I don't like this. This is so argued about, poor old water. Some people are looking at this plastic bottle and think it's disgusting to drink water out of a plastic bottle. Some people think that water should be filtrated out of a tap. Some people think that it should come from a valley somewhere in Fiji or Tahiti, or some special spring water. Some people think that we should be drinking bubbly water. There's a whole heap of argument about fluid or water. So how about, do you have long clear wheeze? That could be a really good place to start. So then the 4 macronutrients, and I'll tap into these ones first, because alcohol's really interesting. The 4 macronutrients are alcohol, carbohydrate, protein, and fat. And if you put that into perspective, if you had absolutely no food and you were going to die, and you came across a bottle of wild turkey or a bottle of wine, would you survive if you drank the alcohol? And the suggestion is that yes, you wouldn't die. Now, I don't think you would live at peak performance, have a stack of energy, look good in the mirror, and be getting the results that you want from your drinking plan. But our body can certainly use alcohol as an energy source. Interestingly, it's the preferred energy source. So there's nowhere to store alcohol. We always joke about this at our house, if you tap onto a beer belly, beer will not come out. When you drink alcohol, your body will burn up the alcohol because there's nowhere to store it. This is not a storage tank. A beer belly is not a storage tank for alcohol. So when it's the preferred energy source, it means that if you eat anything else and you've got alcohol in your system, your body will burn up the alcohol, and everything else will have to be turned into, or can't be used as energy, because your body's using alcohol for energy until the alcohol's burnt up. So there's the question, can I live on alcohol? And of course there are alcoholics who do live on alcohol, so that's just something to consider. Is it a good or a bad substance? And there's a big argument there, because there are some people for religious reasons that would never drink. There are some people for moral and ethical reasons that would never drink. There are some people that used to drink a large amount. They're considered to be alcoholics and they now never want to drink. And there are other people who just love to have a glass of wine with dinner, or they love a cocktail, or the alcohol that they put into their life is a really social part of their life and they really, really enjoy it. So before we make statements about the macronutrient that is alcohol, should we find out, does this person drink? Have they ever drunk in the past? How do they feel about alcohol before making general statements? Could that be a really good idea? So that's alcohol. For you, is it good or bad? And for the person that's sitting in front of you, the unique individual, is it good or bad for them? So at our house, there's always bourbon and there's always wine, because K-Man loves to drink bourbon, he loves to drink wine. I don't drink at all. I have no interest. I'd rather drink cough medicine, and I have no interest in drinking cough medicine either. So to talk to me about alcohol would actually be a waste of time. All you'd have to say is, Rowie, do you drink? And I say no, and then we can move on. Sometimes we waste a lot of time on this substance when we don't have to, and for other people it's a really important part of their life, and we really need to find a way to put it into their healthy eating plan or their healthy lifestyle. And that's a really special thing to consider, and certainly a special tool. When you ask somebody, what are your favourite foods, or what are the favourite things that you like to consume, if somebody says to me, I like to drink alcohol, the next statement that would come out of my mouth would be this: your healthy eating plan would always include your favourite alcohol. Because it takes the stigma off it. Oh, I can't have it, it's bad for me. I now can build a relationship with somebody without them getting angry with me or frustrated with me or annoyed with me because a glass of wine at night happens to be their favourite thing. And imagine that if somebody says alcohol is I just love to have a glass of alcohol at night, it's my favourite thing to do. If I didn't know that and I just come in and say, don't drink alcohol, it's bad for you, and your body's got nowhere to store it, and when you've got alcohol in your system, your body doesn't burn up anything else, so don't drink alcohol. Is it possible that then I would have a breakdown of my relationship with that person and we wouldn't get on anymore? And that's pretty much what this conversation is about between you and I today, is how do we build relationships with people so that if we actually want to make changes with the way they eat so that they can perform at their best, look good, have a stack of energy and get the results that they want, that we've got a relationship with them to do that rather than annoying them or making them angry because we're telling them what to do. So that's liquid form. I also like to cover off this one, so coffee, tea, energy drinks, all of those things, because there's a lot of argument about whether coffee's good or bad. Some people will tell you that coffee's fattening, and other people will tell you that coffee helps you lose weight. There's a big difference in between those two. How about we ask somebody, do you like to drink coffee? Do you like to drink tea? Do you like to drink energy drinks? The person might be somebody that goes to the gym on a regular basis and they have a pre-workout drink, which is usually caffeine. Some people just take caffeine tablets. For some people, this is a really important part of their life. Should we find out? It's interesting, again, people say to me, Rowie, do you drink coffee? Technically I do, but this is my favourite coffee. I've been drinking it since I was, I don't know, a teenager. But if you look at my coffee when I drink it, you'd think I was having a glass of milk. I have about half a teaspoon of coffee in a very large amount of milk. And I'm just sharing that with you because I could technically say that I drink coffee, and you might say to me, but coffee's bad for you, and not realise what I'm doing with my coffee. How about this? How about we don't put a stigma on food that it's good or bad, that anything is good or bad? Is it possible that everything that is extreme could be a challenge? And I always use this example. A glass of wine every night, probably no challenge if you love to drink wine. If I drank a bottle of wine, I'd probably be dead. I'd have alcoholic poisoning. There's other people that can drink a bottle of wine and it has no effect on them at all. Some people have one glass of wine and they're great, but if they drink too much, they're really sick the next day, they're hungover and they vomit. So there's an extreme there. How about we find out before we tell people what to do? Even water. You know, there's some people that have died of drinking too much water. So, I mean, that's an extreme. But should we find out, are there people that have died from being dehydrated? Of course. So this is really important, this stuff, but either end of the scale to the extreme, it's not a good thing. When it comes to chocolate, I always have a giggle because I had a student in one of my colleges in Australia, and we were talking about good and bad foods, and he decided that he would work out for himself what would happen if you ate a large amount of broccoli, because we talked about the difference between good and bad food. So chocolate's often considered a bad food and broccoli is considered a good food. So he ate 3 kilograms of broccoli in one sitting. I would never do that. I'm not recommending for you to do that. He did it as a scientific experiment, and he will share with you very passionately and very openly that it was one of the worst things he ever did. He said he passed really stinky wind for many days. He had a really bad stomachache for very many days. He didn't enjoy the experience, and he never wants to eat broccoli ever again. Of course not. Broccoli is technically a healthy green vegetable, if you love green vegetables. But anything to the excess is not going to feel good. So you could say broccoli is a good food, but 3 kilos of broccoli, probably not so good. You could say that chocolate's a bad food, and in this box there's lots of little pieces of Toblerone, and if you ate one of those or two of those or even 3 or 4 of those tiny little chocolates, there's probably not going to be a challenge. If you eat the whole box all at once, that might be a challenge. But again, if I eat this whole box over a year, maybe not the challenge. So is it good or bad food? Well, here's a better question. Do you like to eat chocolate? And if I tell somebody that chocolate's bad and they shouldn't eat it, but chocolate is their favourite food and they really love it, there's 2 things that might happen, and they might have happened to you. Consider this. Number 1 is you believe the person that told you, so you don't eat chocolate for how long? Might be a week, 2 weeks, 6 months, 6 years. Some people have even gone without chocolate because somebody told them that it's bad for them. But is it possible that there's going to come a time when normally when you only had 3 or 4 of these, you end up eating the whole box because you went so long without your favourite food? Is it possible that there's a bounce back effect? If you don't have, then you want to have a whole lot more. And could that be a challenge? If I have 1 or 2 of these every day for the rest of my life, I enjoy my chocolate, I love it, I get a wow experience. If I eat the whole box, I'm probably going to feel sick. But if I don't have, and then I have, then I end up feeling sick and probably really guilty. The reverse of that is, let's say I never eat chocolate again, but I start getting really angry about the fact that I can't have chocolate, and every time I see somebody eating chocolate, I get annoyed and I get depressed and angry and frustrated because my favourite food is chocolate and I can't have it. Is that a good headspace to put people in? I don't want people to live their life like that. How about you? I would love people to thoroughly enjoy their food. Now, I get that there's some people that don't. Some people are down this end and they just eat for performance and they don't care about pleasure and they don't care about taste. But the people that do really care about taste and the people that do really have a favourite food, should we ask them that question? What is your favourite food? And we're always going to include it in your healthy eating plan. What is the food that you hate the most, or the foods that you would never eat? And we're never going to include those in your healthy eating plan. Could that help with mental health? And does food have anything to do with mental health? And I'll go a step further. Is it possible that we have a lot of mentally unhealthy people in our world because they're binge eating, or they feel guilty about not eating, or they're not eating at all, so they end up with anorexia or bulimia? The reverse of that is they eat too much. So if I sit down with, or I've got food in front of me and I have an argument with myself. Now, if you are logical about your food, and we call this the emotional eating scale, 0 on the emotional eating scale is there's no emotion attached to food at all. You eat when you're hungry, you stop eating when you're full, you eat whatever you want, you don't count calories, you don't ever go on a diet, you just eat logically. So if you're hungry, you eat, and if you're not hungry, you don't eat. Number 10 on the emotional eating scale is when food is in control of your life. So even as this lovely array of chocolates and lollies and nuts has been sitting here, you might have been looking at them and thinking, oh, that's bad, we shouldn't be eating that, that's bad, or I'd really like to eat that, that's good. If you sit down with food, anytime you come in contact with food and you're having an argument about whether it's good or bad, or whether you should or shouldn't eat it, or whether you feel good or bad if you don't eat it, there's a great question to ask. How do you feel when you eat food? And a lot of people just say, well, I feel good, I'm not hungry anymore. But some people will tell you they feel guilty, they feel angry, they feel frustrated, they feel disempowered because they eat food. If you ask the reverse question, how do you feel if you don't eat food? Somebody at 0 on the emotional eating scale will tell you, well, I feel happy and if I don't eat food, I feel hungry and I feel angry. And when I eat food, I feel happy. If I am at 10 on the emotional eating scale, it could go like this. How do you feel if you don't eat food? And somebody could say to you, I feel disciplined, I feel strong, I feel powerful, I feel proud of myself. And could those be headspaces that we need to understand before we start talking about whether this is a good or a bad food? So if we go back to our macronutrients, because food is such a complicated topic, is it about the emotion? Is it about the logic? Is it about the macronutrients? Is it about the micronutrients? Is it about how often we eat? And there's an interesting argument there, because some people are saying eat whatever you bloody well want. Just make sure that you leave 12 hours between meals, or 16 hours between meals, or eat one day, not the next day. Some people is eat 1 week and not the next week. There are some people who are intermittent fasting for 7 days at a time. I'm not as I'm pretty sure you can tell from now, I have no good or bad food. I have no right or wrong diets. I would never tell somebody what to eat. I would never give advice about food. I just ask questions. So do you like to drink alcohol? Are you drinking water at the moment? Do you have long, clear wheeze? Do you like to drink coffee? I'm going to use this one as an interesting example because there are a lot of people that would say that this is poisonous, that any artificial sweetener is poisonous. Interesting, if you have a look at the research that has been done on artificial sweeteners and whether or not it's good or bad, we've got to go back to the extreme. There's a very interesting study done on rats, and they gave them an enormous amount of artificial sweetener, and these poor rats got really sick, and I think they got cancer, which has then been extrapolated out to if you use artificial sweetener, you're going to get cancer. Now, I don't know whether that's right or wrong. What I do know is that this is a substance that people put into their coffee, and some people much prefer to put it in their tea or coffee than sugar, and that's the way they live their life. So should I ask that question? So what kind of beverages do you drink? Do you drink hot or cold drinks? What's your favourite drink? What do you put into your drinks? How much milk do you put sweetener or sugar or honey or whatever? And just ask the question. Having worked with a lot of people over my career path who have eating challenges, I don't like to call it disorders because disorders is, to me, such a negative word. If I have a challenge with my food, it might mean that I can overcome that challenge. So in fact, most of my clients had serious challenges with food. I had a lot of my clients who were anorexics. They didn't want to eat food at all. So every time they sat down to eat food, they had an argument in their head and they won. So I want to eat this, I can't eat this, I shouldn't eat this, I'd like to eat this, but should I eat this? No. And there's a big war going on inside their head. But an anorexic headspace wins. No, I'm not going to eat that. That food can't beat me. I'm in control. The reverse of that, of course, is obesity, which is you still have the same argument. Food is controlling your life. But in your headspace, I can't have, I mustn't have, I shouldn't have, but I want to have, and the food wins and you always eat. So that's an interesting headspace. Don't eat and I win over the food, or eat everything and the food wins over me. The one in between is really interesting because that's when you eat everything, but then you aim to get rid of it. So you either want to vomit it out or poo it out or exercise it off. So eating or exercise bulimia is a horrible headspace where I eat everything and then I feel so guilty and so terrible or so angry with myself for eating that I try and get rid of it. I'm sharing that with you because I don't want people to feel like that, and I'm sure that as a parent, as a teacher, as a coach, as an exercise professional, that's not something that you want for your people either. So what can we do to make sure that people stay at zero or close to zero on the emotional eating scale, which means food is never controlling my life. I just eat when I'm hungry. I stop eating when I'm full. I eat all the things that I enjoy. There is no good or bad food, just the amount of which I eat it. If I put on a bit of weight, I go, oh, well, I'm a bit chubby. I need to lose some weight, so I'm going to eat a bit less and move a bit more, versus 10 on the emotional eating scale, which is, oh my God, I've put on some weight and now I'm depressed, angry, upset. And usually when people are depressed, angry, and upset when it comes to food, they end up eating even more. And that's when we get ourselves into some serious challenges, because being overweight or obese for me is where your weight is affecting your health. And not just your physical health, but also your mental health. So if you have a relationship with food or exercise that is affecting your physical and mental health in a negative way, then surely we need to avoid that for the people that come into our life. So technically, there's alcohol is a macronutrient. Fluid we obviously need to drink because otherwise we'll die. Your body needs not to be dehydrated. It needs to be hydrated. Coffee is a question to ask. Then we have protein, carbohydrate, and fat. But interestingly, and I've picked these substances for a reason, most food have everything in them. So I'm going to use this one first. This is nuts. What is a nut? Is it a carbohydrate? Is it a protein? Or is it a fat? And I learnt this from a very good friend of mine who has a doctorate in dietetics. She shared with me very happily that she always has a bowl of nuts in her house like I do, because nuts are the perfect food. They have carbohydrate, they have protein, and they have fat. So we could quite happily live on nuts. So if I have no food and I came across alcohol in the desert, I could probably survive. If I have water, I could survive. If I come across protein, so whether it's in the form of an animal or comes with cheese or comes in fish or comes in nuts or comes in legumes, I'm going to be able to survive, because most protein substances also have fat. So for example, meat also has fat in it. So how do we say, well, you shouldn't have that particular macronutrient? Because most foods have all macronutrients in them, and the ones that don't, could we live on them? And the answer is yes. But could we live on them with a stack of energy, performing at our best, looking good in the mirror, and getting the best results possible from our eating plan? And that's again to be argued. And I share that with you because I've been at medical conferences, as I often have shared in the past, where the oncologists and the cardiologists are arguing about food to the point where they're going to punch each other up. And they're arguing that you should be a carnivore or you should be a vegan vegetarian. Now, there's a big difference in between. So does my body know if I'm getting protein from nuts or cheese or fish or meat? Can I get my protein from vegetables? Can I get my protein from substances that come out of the ground? And there's an argument that yes, you can. Most of those foods are not a complete protein, but when you put them together, you end up with a complete protein. The interesting thing about when you eat an animal product, it is a complete protein. It has all the amino acids. But there are some people that would never eat meat for religious reasons, for cultural reasons, for ethical reasons. They're not going to eat any any animal products. They're only going to eat vegetables. They're only going to be vegan vegetarians. Should we find that out before we start delivering information about food? So then something like chocolate, which is almost exciting as nuts, because chocolate also has carbohydrate, protein and fat. Another complete food. One of my favourite foods is Italian gelati, which again for me is the perfect food because it's got protein, carbohydrate and fat. Should we know what the body does with all of those substances? So when I eat or drink alcohol, obviously there's no storage system, so my body's got to burn it off. When I eat fat, what happens? When I eat protein, what happens? When I eat carbohydrate, what happens? And what is sugar? Sugar's a really interesting one because it's got a huge, big stigma attached to it. It's really bad for you. So I'll use sugar again as an example. If I have 4 or 5 jelly beans today, will it matter? If I eat the whole bowl of jelly beans today, will it matter? If I eat the whole bowl of jelly beans over a whole year, will it matter? And I don't have an answer for that, and I hope that you don't either. Because could it depend on the person? So if somebody is doing, for example, an ultramarathon run today, a bowl of jelly beans could be the perfect food for them because they want to get instant sugar as quickly as possible into their bloodstream so they've got energy to keep running. Somebody who's sitting down all day and not doing anything and they eat a bowl of jelly beans, what's going to happen to all of that sugar? And inside our body, I think it's something that's really important as exercise professionals. We need to know this because I often, and I'm sure that you do too, I often chat about becoming a food-burning, fat-burning, calorie-burning, sugar-burning machine. And just as from the pure technology of what happens with food inside our body, carbohydrate, glycogen, sugar, glucose, all the same thing. Our body has a storage system for that, for carbohydrate. So we store some as glucose in our brain. We store some carbohydrate as glycogen in our liver, glycogen in our muscles. But we only have a 0.5 kilo capacity for storage. So alcohol, nowhere to store it. Carbohydrate, 0.5 kilo, between 400 to 500 grams. That's it. We can't store any more than that. So if I eat this big bowl of jelly beans and I put in more than if I've already got 300 or 400 grams in my body, I then put excess. What does my body do with that extra carbohydrate, with the extra sugar? Where does it go? And the human body is an amazing thing. The first thing it'll do is try and burn it off, of course, so you'll have an increase in temperature. You often see that with kids that eat a large amount of sugar. They want to run around because the human body wants to burn it off. Your body always wants to get back to normal. So if you overload it with something, it's going to want to get rid of it as quickly as possible. The challenge with sugar, of course, itchy head, the challenge with sugar, fat, carbohydrate, is if we keep eating too much food, so it's not the macronutrient that's the challenge, if we just keep eating too much food, is it possible that our body gets overloaded? That everything breaks down because it doesn't know what to do with it. And you'll often hear of a hormone called insulin, which is the hormone responsible for opening up our cells to let our energy into the cell. So yes, fat goes to the fat cell, carbohydrate goes to the brain, to the liver and to the muscles. and our protein goes to our amino acid pool. But if we keep overloading and overloading and overloading, that poor insulin system, it breaks down. It says, I can't cope, you're giving me too much food, and it shuts off. Type 2 diabetes isn't that we don't have insulin, it just means it's not working properly because our body's broken down. Now the challenge with, and I'll use sugar as an example, this molecule, the glucose molecule, when it's in your bloodstream is large. It's bigger than fat, it's bigger than protein. And interestingly, the example I use is if you live on a suburban street, if a big semi-trailer kept driving up and down your suburban street, your road would get broken. You'd get potholes in the road and the road would get damaged. If you just ride your bicycle up and down your suburban street, it's not going to do any damage to the road. Well, when you put sugar into your arteries, into your hoses, as I call them, inside your body, glucose is a big molecule. It's like a semi-trailer in your hoses. And if it's that those big molecules are running around your bloodstream and they're not going into your brain as glucose, into your liver as glycogen, and into your muscles as glycogen, because your insulin's not working, so the cells are not opening to take the sugar out of your bloodstream, you end up with high blood sugar levels. I'm sure you've heard that. Do you have elevated blood sugar levels, which is the precursor to type 2 diabetes? What that means is these big molecules break up your hoses, break up your arteries and cause damage, nicks, cuts, bruises. What happens now is that cholesterol can stick onto those cuts and nicks and bruises, the potholes in your road, and now I get clogged arteries, which means that my blood can't flow freely, which means oxygen can't flow freely, which means nutrients can't flow freely because my hoses are damaged. So the big sugar molecules that are supposed to be inside my liver, inside my muscles, inside my brain are still in my bloodstream, breaking up my hoses. The cholesterol then sticks onto that. I clog up my arteries. And of course, type 2 diabetes or cardiovascular disease is where I can't get oxygen and blood and nutrients to where it needs to go. So I can end up with a stroke for my brain. I have a heart attack because I can't get oxygen and blood flow to my heart. I could go blind because I can't get oxygen and blood flow to my eyes. I could have to have my limbs amputated because I have bad circulation to my extremities. So is sugar bad in a large amount? Absolutely. But I'll go back to my example. If I'm a really fit, strong human being and I've only got half a kilo of stored carbohydrate and I'm constantly tapping into those carbohydrate stores because I'm really fit, so I'm sprinting and I'm lifting heavy and I'm punching hard and I'm kicking hard and I'm a really active person, then this bowl of jelly beans might be the thing that I actually need because I can't get enough calories from broccoli and I can't get enough calories from vegetables and I can't get enough calories from anything else. So I actually need high calorie sugar because that's what my body's running on. So some things to consider. Is this a good or a bad food versus depending on the person that I've got in front of me, depending on the elite athlete that's sitting in front of me, depending on the inactive person that's sitting in front of me, depending on the person that's sitting in front of me and what they like and don't like. If somebody loves jelly beans and I tell them they can never have jelly beans again, is it possible that I could screw around with their mental health? If somebody loves chocolate and I tell them you can't have chocolate, it's bad for you, could I screw around with their mental health? If somebody never eats chocolate and I tell them you can't eat chocolate, it doesn't matter. So, food as an overall. Do we need fluid? Yes, otherwise we're going to die. Do we need alcohol? Arguable, because some people, can you live without it? Yes, but some people love it so much. It's an important part of their life. So why would you want to take something so pleasurable out of their life? Do we need carbohydrate? Well, there's an argument for that, of course, because there's some people now who are on a ketone diet where they're suggesting that you just need fat and you just need protein. And there's a lot of people who are living very happily just eating animal products. That's it. They don't eat grains, they don't eat fruit, they don't eat vegetables, they don't eat sugar, they don't eat anything else except meat products. And if I ask them the question, do you have a stack of energy? Are you performing at your best? Do you love what you see in the mirror? And are you getting the results that you want from your carnivore diet? Guess what? They say, yes, I feel fantastic. I'm exercising at my best. I'm an elite athlete. I love the carnivore diet. So who am I to say you shouldn't be on the carnivore diet if that's what they love? If somebody's can answer yes to those 4 questions and they're a vegan, vegetarian, what right do I have to say to them you have to eat meat or you have to eat animal products? I don't want to upset anybody. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. I don't want to frustrate anybody, and I don't want to have an argument with anybody about food. I want to tap into my clients' psychology, their physiology, and get them performing at their best. How about you? So, do we need carbohydrate? The arguable answer is that your brain runs on glucose, your muscles run on glycogen, and your stored phosphate system, the instant energy for sprinting, we need to have stored carbohydrate inside our body. But are there people who seem to function quite effectively without it? And the answer is yes. Do we need to have protein? Well, our body's made of protein. So our hair, our skin, our nails, our bones, everything is made of protein. So what happens if we don't have enough protein? Could it be that we have flaky nails, we have bad skin, we have bad hair, our muscles and bones are not effectively replacing or regenerating or getting stronger? So do we get energy from protein? When you go sprint, the argument is that you are only using carbohydrates, so you don't need protein. If you're in your anaerobic system, it's carbohydrate, arguably, because the ketone people will say no, your brain can run on ketones and you can force your body to exercise hard on ketones. So who am I to argue with them if that's what they believe? Technically, our brain runs on glucose, our muscles run on glycogen, we store half a kilo. So do we need to have some carbohydrate? And the answer could be yes or no, depending on who you are. Protein is what our body's made of. When you're in your aerobic system, you use carbohydrate, protein, and fat. About a 50-50 split between the carbohydrate and the fat. And again, there's a tiny bit of protein being used as energy, but predominantly it's a rebuilding substance rather than an energy substance. So if you ask somebody, do you need more protein for energy? There would be an argument to say no, we need more carbohydrate or fat for energy, because your body can run very effectively through the Krebs cycle, and what the energy systems use, we would predominantly use use fat and carbohydrate, not protein. So is food a controversial topic? Yeah. Can we argue about it? Yeah. Could we put ourselves in a better position by finding out what our client loves, what's important to them, the foods they like and don't like, why they eat the way they eat at the moment, and could it be for religious reasons, could it be for social reasons, could it be for personal reasons, could it be for ethical or moral reasons, could it be just because they love something, and why would we take something away from somebody if they really love it? Why would we waste calories on food that we don't like? That's one of my favourite questions. I'm sure there's plenty of foods that are really good for me, but there's some things that I just don't want to eat. How about you? So it doesn't matter. For me, I don't care if it's a superfood or it's the best food in the world, but if I don't like the taste of it and I'm not enjoying it, I don't want to waste calories on food that I don't love. So my most personal question is this. Before we preach, teach and tell, and I hope that you never do, how about we ask, what are the foods that you love, and let's always include them in your healthy eating plan? What are the foods that you don't love, and let's never include them in your healthy eating plan? Why do you eat the way you do at the moment? So what are you eating, and why have you chosen to eat that way? And let's find out if there are moral and ethical and religious reasons, or personal reasons, or just convictions about why people are vegan, vegetarian, or carnivore, or somewhere in between. Should we know where people love to eat so that we can provide them with that beautiful experience? When to eat is a huge argument. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day, but some people hate to eat breakfast, and your intermittent fasting folks are totally against eating breakfast. If somebody's breakfast is their favourite meal of the day, why would you take away their most wow experience? And if somebody hates to eat breakfast, why would you force them to do something that they really don't want to do? Go back to those 4 questions. Do you have a stack of energy? Are you performing at your best? Do you love what you see in the mirror? And are you getting the results that you want from your eating and exercise plan? And if the answer is no, you as your own high performance eating and exercise coach, what advice would you give yourself? And as I've asked you that question, I reckon that you've got advice that you would give yourself. You've got an opinion about food. You've got foods that you like and you don't like. You've got moral and ethical and personal reasons for eating certain foods and not eating certain foods. Could it be a really good idea to give everybody that same respect? So let's ask people, what do you like to eat? What don't you like to eat? What are you eating at the moment and why? Where do you like to eat, and where do you get the most wow experience from food? What times of the day do you like to eat food? How do you feel when you eat food? How do you feel if you don't eat food? Very important for mental health, and to find out whether somebody's at a logical place about food or more emotional. Are you on track or off track to achieving your goals from your current eating plan? If you're your own eating coach, your high performance eating coach, what advice would you give yourself? And then me as your exercise professional, what do you want me to do when it comes to your food? Do you need help? Do you need advice? Do you want suggestions? What do you want from me? And you might be really surprised that this person wants nothing from you because they've got a naturopath or a dietitian or their footy coach or their mum who's given them everything they need to know about food, and they're not interested in what you've got to tell them, versus somebody who might need lots of help. And if somebody, if somebody does need lots of help, would it be a really good idea to get them to come up with their own ideas rather than telling them what to do? Because you might come across as the guru, and you might come across as the expert, and you might have all the big words that people believe you know what you're talking about when it comes to food. But regardless of how ripped your abdominals are, or how tight your butt cheeks are, or how big your arms are, or how gorgeous you are, is it possible that another guru could come along with tighter butt cheeks or more ripped abdominals or more degrees than you, or more in-depth knowledge with bigger words than you, and this person will then just swap to another guru? Wouldn't it be nice if we could get people to work out for themselves what's going to work best for them for the rest of their lives? And that's probably my last question. If somebody wants to, or should we be able to demand energy, performance, looking good and results from our eating plan, how long do we want that for? Do we want to have a stack of energy all day, every day for the rest of our lives? Do we want to perform at our best all day, every day for the rest of our lives? Do we want to look good for the rest of our lives? And do we want to make sure that we're getting the results that we want from our eating and exercise plan for the rest of our lives, rather than just for 12 weeks or 8 weeks, or I'm just on a diet for this short period of time, I'm going to lose weight and then put it back on again? I would like to, if people need to lose weight, I would like to help them lose weight and never find it again. How about you? If people want to be healthy, fit and strong, I'd like to help them do that for the rest of their life, not just for a short 8-week or 12-week period. So as an exercise professional, yes, please, learn about your macronutrients. Where do they come from? How does your body use them? How does your body store them? How does your body burn them up? But let's find out about each individual person and what's important to them, and let's get people as fit and strong as possible so their body actually becomes a food-burning, calorie-burning, fat-burning, energy-burning machine. And if we could be at this space, you ready? Because this is why I'm standing here today. I'm a very unique individual. I've been pretty much the same weight, the same size, the same energy level, the same performance level all of my life. I love what I see in the mirror. I've got a stack of energy every day, and I eat whatever I want, when I want, however much I want. I stop eating when I'm full. I eat when I'm hungry, and I love my food. Now, I'm not expecting you to be the same, but it's a really fun place to live where you don't have food controlling your life. You just love your food and you love your exercise. And wouldn't that be awesome for you, for me, for our clients, to not have food controlling our life, but we just love eating food because it adds massive value to our lives. Yay.